Hi, today I want to tell you about few more games that I feel should get follow-ups and for whatever the reason they didn't. So let's jump straight in. Dreamweb was one of the most unusual and unique adventure games ever made. It is set in a futuristic dark noir cyberpunk city and tells a tale of seemingly everyday Joe. Well, everyday Ryan. A bartender who's been plagued by troubling nightmares, blackouts and strange visions for months. On a side note, perhaps I'm an everyday dude too, cause I have those as well. Short of blackouts, that is. Anyway, Ryan's symptoms were getting worse and worse until one night he was visited in a dream by a mysterious monk who told him about the so-called 7 evil ones. 7 people who are going to be responsible for breaking of the Dreamweb in the future. Dreamweb being this esoteric and invisible barrier between our reality and the world of darkness. Then the monk asked Ryan to become his deliverer, as in no questions asked killer, and seek out and remove the evil 7 in the real world to prevent the catastrophe. Tired, sleepless and mentally exhausted Ryan agreed just to have nightmares stop so he could finally get some well-deserved Z's. Moral implications of Dreamweb's plot are an interesting thought experiment to ponder about. I mean, is killing someone for the crimes that they did not commit yet justifiable, even if we know that they will? But how can we ever be sure? Can the future not be changed if we know of it and it haven't happened yet? Or do we go by the gut feeling? And what does it say about us, if that gut feeling is what tells us to do the most terrible of deeds? Are we, even as gamers, bad people? Anyway, Dreamweb's story, even if troubling, is no doubt interesting, but unlike those found in most other adventure games, it's not the story that's the most unique thing about it. It's the viewpoint, violence and atmosphere. So unlike virtually no other point-and-clicker to date, Dreamweb is viewed from an entirely 90-degree top-down perspective, kinda like first GTA was, but much more detailed, more zoomed in and slower moving. It's just beautiful. The fans are spinning slowly in dark, damp rooms, the cards, documents and other random papers lie around the tables left there a night before chaotically. There are coffee cups, cigarettes, toothbrushes everywhere, and any and all pixels that you notice sticking out of the background anywhere may be an item worth taking a look at or collecting, because nearly everything in Dreamweb can be examined, picked up and carried in the inventory, even if its usability is questionable or non-existent. Many of the objects that you carry can also be interacted with, used or opened and closed, and that freedom to make mistakes and pick up trash is kinda fun about it. Dreamweb is a rather gory game too, as the kills that you have to perform to complete your gruesome task not only often take place in a kill or be killed situations, but are also rather brutal. I mean, if memory serves correct, you get one of your targets when he's in bed with a woman, killing him then and there as he was having sex. So yeah, it's definitely not a game for kids. I mean, not that we cared about stuff like that back in the day, but today it wouldn't fly. And finally, the atmosphere. I mean, just look at it. It's so cyberpunky. Everything is dark, dirty and grim, and the game's world looks like a dystopian vision of future to be. The high-tech, low-life nature of its theme is omnipresent, and you get those very Tex Murphy-like vibes from Dreamweb's presentation all throughout. Now, just imagine getting a sequel to it today, perhaps using a first-person perspective viewpoint, and showering only lit up with lights of thousands of neon city in dense, thick rain, all naturally using way more ray tracing than anyone would ever need. And if the story of it all would be as dark, brutal and thought-provoking as that of the original, for instance a tale of revenge for the kill that will happen many years from when the story is set, it could be a true next-gen hit. I loved Pitch Black and the first Chronicles of Riddick movies. Naturally, I am aware that they are no masterpieces of any kind, be it in terms of their story, cinematography, effects or acting, but they're my guilty pleasures and I enjoy coming back to them every few years when I'm bored. So when the first Chronicles of Riddick game came out, Escape from Butcher Bay, saying that I was curious was an understatement. And since it was available on the OG Xbox, which was my machine of choice back then, I quickly pulled the trigger. The game is a prequel to Pitch Black and its entire story takes place in Butcher Bay, a supermax prison that no one has ever escaped from. Well, no one so far, cause your mission, as it's easy to figure out, is to do just that. Escape from Butcher Bay is to date one of the, if not the most fun, I have ever had when playing an FPS. It mixes first-person combat, plenty of stealth sneaking and its incredible story so well in fact that I'd risk saying that it's as good, if not better than the movies. Interestingly enough, the game also explores when and how Riddick got his eyes shined, so a staple of his character in the movies that allows him to see in pitch black. That terrible pun I assure is entirely accidental. Now, many of you know that I'm not an avid FPS gamer, that I love my RPGs and strategies, preferably in a turn-based setting, much more than games that rely on explosive action. But this title, oh man, I think I've went through it in one sitting. Well, I may be exaggerating a little, but I completed it super fast. It's not a spoiler now since the game released 20 years ago, but naturally Riddick eventually manages to escape, leaving Butcher Bay in a rather terrible state. So 5 years later, in 2009, Assault on Dark Athena came out, a follow-up and also a first-person shooter. Now, 5 years is a lot of time. In 5 years I went from being an 8-year-old kid to a 13-year-old, hormones-buzzing, boobs-loving, acne-covered teen. It was not the same 5 years, mind you, I'm just saying that it's plenty enough time for things to change considerably. And the technological progress between the two games meant that Dark Athena looked even better. It's obviously not the graphics that make the game though, and while it was still a very fun title, it lacked that that made the first so memorable and beloved. The story picks up nearly directly after Butcher Bay ended and sees Riddick being found when in hibernation, drifting in space, by a group of renegade mercenaries and brought onto the gigantic ship Dark Athena. And Dark Athena is used to cybernetically modify humans into mindless drones. Riddick is naturally not to be remade in any tech mambo-jumbo way, since the most wanted man in the galaxy, he's worth a lot of money, I mean credits, he's worth credits, but he will have to face many of them on his way to freedom. While Dark Athena looked considerably better than the first game and was a lot of fun too, it missed that wow factor, that's something that made the first so special. And the only real upside other than the presentation it brought to the video gaming table was the multiplayer, which sadly I've never had a chance to try out. But what if we were going to get the third entry today? I mean, the presentation jump between 2009 and now is even bigger than the first two games. And if someone smart was put behind it, the story and gameplay could complement the graphics rather well. I mean, wouldn't you like to see the third game follow the events of the cinematic Chronicles of Riddick? Maybe what happens when he's left with an army of necromongers to lead? What does he do or does not do with them? Will he use them to take all the space empires down? Will he free them from their necromonger mark? Or maybe he'll kill them one by one, an entire empire worth of drones as they're beyond saving. It would be hella cool to learn, I think. And yes, I've elected to ignore all the movies that came out after the first two as they sucked balls, and I'm hoping that the potential game would not go down the same route. The Horde was a wildly original game upon its release and one that was unlike anything else. It's an action strategy title with a bit of tower defense mixed in for good measure. And boy oh boy, was it a good measure indeed. The game was fast, fun and required you to think. You were playing as Chauncey, to whom you were introduced via humorous live-action game opening cinematics, and whom received a magic sword Grimwhacker from the king upon saving his life. The king also lives a village in Chauncey's care, and he has to protect it from hordelings. Some different kinds of monsters attacking it periodically. So, our hero has to make sure that the village will prosper, producing plenty enough crops and cows. There are several types of hordelings, each of them looking differently and having unique types of attack and properties. And these monsters will go after villagers, crops, cows, houses and defenses that Chauncey erects, so you will have to take him all around the map, disposing of them as fast as possible. While the game starts off rather easy, it becomes quite challenging soon, and figuring out which of the hordelings are the most dangerous and what's most important to protect is a key to success. In case you want to revisit the classic today though, it's the cows. You're welcome. They're expensive and the score's based on their survival in large part too. The village/city grows in time and the progression of seasons is nicely presented with different weather conditions during gameplay. Good performance allows you to get additional protectors for the settlement, one of them even being a dragon if you can afford it. And while they are definitely a huge weight off your shoulders doing their part quite well, you still have to run around like a maniac swinging that magical sword at everything. And while the idea behind Horde and its gameplay is fun, it's not without its faults. And the controls and interface are the biggest of Horde's problems. They're like an additional, always present and constantly annoying invisible hordeling that you just cannot get rid of. And to change a weapon or use an item mid-combat requires of you to summon some kind of a godlike patience and perform incredibly demanding feat of mouse gymnastics, as doing it the way the game wants you to is really infuriating. Especially when accompanied by a deafening moose of cows being mauled by monsters somewhere off screen. The difficulty curve could also be changed to be a bit softer incline, as currently in the original it's best described as not a curve at all, but a difficulty wall. Not only it grows fast, but also very soon you reach a point where progress seems all but possible. So, if we were to get a new Horde game today, all of that could be fixed. I imagine it's something running on an engine similar to that used in Path of Exile or Diablo 4, so still using kinda sorta isometric viewpoint, but in reality being in full 3D. These are both also really fast and easy to control, and it would benefit Horde's gameplay loop a lot, keeping Chauncey on top of the beasts and your sanity intact, as you won't have to fight with the enemies and controls at the same time. Sure, it may not be a candidate for a AAA game, but as a single A or even indie title, it would be hella fun, provided the difficulty progression would be more fair. Have you ever played Horde? Would you like to see it remade too? Let me know in the comments below. Even though their stories are spread by quite a few years apart, both Little Big Adventure games are set in the same world of Twin Sun and follow the same protagonist, Twin Sen. I know, the names are confusing. LBA 1 and 2 are also both top-down isometric view action-adventure titles with a very strong emphasis on adventuring and action, and focusing on our hero saving his world from two different but as terrible futures. In the first, guided by a vision of an outlawed by the planet's dictator goddess, he frees the entire Twin Sun from under the evil Dr. Funfrog's oppressive rule. And in the second, he must save the planet from the invading aliens. Naturally, I'm seriously oversimplifying both of these backgrounds, but I'm betting with this one that either most of you know the games already and love them to bits, or if you don't, then it's the best time to find them and give them a chance, as they're both excellent. In terms of everything. The graphical design of the world, so all the buildings, creatures and plants, their style is unique and well-fitting to the equally as fantastic storytelling, which is well-paced and takes you through this adventure at a steady, not too fast or too slow pace, allowing you to learn along the way not only about the planet and its customs, but also our unlikely hero's drive and how he steps up to do what's right when there's no one else to do so. Well, he is sort of a chosen, but you know, before he was a nobody. The gameplay itself is a bucket of fun too, allowing you to switch into one of four stances: normal, aggressive, athletic and discreet. With the first being the default, the second allowing Twin Sen to fight, third is for running and jumping, and the last is used for sneaking to move around areas unnoticed. Many of the puzzles may call for a particular mode to be beaten, but some of them offer more than one solution, which adds a lot to the replayability of both games. Presentation is also a strong suit of both titles, but while the music is really nice and atmospheric, definitely something that a lot of attention was put on, sounds and graphics are a-okay and not spectacular in any way. They serve their purpose though, and the top-down isometric perspective is clean and easy to find yourself in at all times. While LBA games are truly enchanting and the adventure they take you on is definitely family-friendly and can be enjoyed by gamers of all ages, they do touch serious grown-up subjects too, just not push them forward to alienate a large chunk of their audience. I'm gonna be honest with you here, as good of games as these are, I've forgotten about them for quite some time now. I am somehow only reminded of them when I have to cover them for a video of sorts or when someone mentions them in the comments. And LBA's today's entry here is based on a comment of one of you on an earlier video. The Neverhood is a crime. It's a crime that was committed in 1996 on Windows and 2 years later on PlayStation, and no one caught the culprits. Cause if they did, I'm sure that we'd had an equally as amazing sequel by now. Perhaps two. It's a point-and-click adventure game using claymation for its graphics. If the term sounds odd, but also like something that you've heard before, let me explain. Claymation is a combination of two words, clay and animation. And it's exactly that. Sculptured characters, environments and items all made out of clay and animated using stop-motion recording. And it looks so amazing. It's a graphical style that does not age at all, and Neverhood looks as incredible today as it did nearly 30 years ago. It is set in a titular mysterious world of Neverhood, with you playing as the Clayman, with a K and not C, you know, for the obligatory 1990s cool factor. And at the very beginning of his adventure, our hero wakes up with a complete amnesia, not knowing who he is, where he is, or even what he's supposed to do. And there's nothing there filling in the gaps, so you have to figure it out all by yourself by just trying things out. So you gotta start exploring the area and interact with objects and the environment. And as you do, you begin finding these discs, and each of them contains a part, a bigger or smaller chunk of the game's story that will in time begin forming a larger whole that will eventually not only make sense but also explain everything about Clayman and his role in the world. Neverhood being an adventure game is naturally full of puzzles, and these are rather varied. Some are really demanding and will require you to try a few times before you beat them, while others are a child's play and you won't even realize that you're completing them as you do. The only odd thing about the game is that you can never tell how demanding the next puzzle is going to be, which makes the progression in the world of Neverhood feel a bit uneven. Difficulty aside, the best thing about the puzzles though is that all of them, and all your interactions with the world too, result in beautiful animations showing outcomes of your actions, successes and failures, in a humorous, often downright hilarious ways. And seeing them play out is always super fun. The unique way the Neverhood tells its tale, allowing you to learn it bit by bit over time and not giving you a straight up quest of, I don't know, let's say rescuing the princess, saving the world or whatever, is something that's very rarely used in the games in the genre. And its magical clay-based presentation has never been done after. Well, at least not on the same scale and at the same quality. Neverhood is a true work of art and a game that screams to get a sequel. Nay, it demands to get one. Nay, so a second nay by now, it more than anything deserves one. And one made in the same style no less, to recapture the enchanting charm of the original. Ideally, I would like it to be made by the same folks, as they've nailed it with the first one, but I am fine with it not being the case for as long as the humor, graphics and the puzzles are all of similar quality and the story is set in equally as magical land. Now look me in the eye, in the screen, and tell me you wouldn't love to see all this remade or get sequels. Ha! I knew you couldn't do it. All of these are amazing, and could be as good if not better if we gave them the 2024/2025 treatment. Are there any games you would like to see get sequels today, years later? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below, and maybe share it too, it helps more than you know. If you didn't, then don't naturally. It was fun talking to you as usual, and I'll see you, or more accurately, talk to you very soon.